I was kidnapped and fed to sharks in the deep sea for 5 years. The day I escaped back, my family threw a welcome home party for me. Sitting at the dinner table were my parents, my older brother, and a strange girl. She picked up a piece of fish, tears falling like rain. "Sister, try this. Dad knows you love fish, and he specially air-freighted it." I stared intently at that piece of meat. Instantly, the sound of bones being crushed, crunch, echoed in my ears. I remembered Annie, my companion, being thrown into the meat grinder, blood staining the entire sea red. The next second, I grabbed the red wine bottle from the table and slammed it hard on her head. "If I see fish again, I'll chop you up and feed you to the dogs." The bottle shattered, and red wine mixed with blood flowed down her forehead. My parents were dumbfounded. My brother pushed me away and protectively hugged the bleeding girl. "Scarlett, are you crazy?" I looked at the way they protected her and suddenly laughed. Yes, I went crazy the day I was sent to hell 5 years ago. But what they didn't know was that I processed my companions' corpses and washed blood off the deck every day on that ship. While they were at home, enjoying family bliss, didn't they want to protect that adopted younger sister and keep her safe and sound? I wouldn't let them. I'd start by ruining this family's good life. 5 years ago, I was kidnapped and sold to an illegal shark fishing vessel in international waters. The captain said that the flesh and blood of young women was the best live bait for attracting sharks. My friend Annie was thrown into the meat grinder right in front of me, becoming minced meat scattered into the sea. Blood stained that sea red. And I, because I was pretty, was kept by the captain as a pet. For 5 years, I handled fish bait every day, washed blood off the deck, and endured torture and violence. 5 years later, a storm. I used a fish knife to slit the captain's throat and jumped into the sea. Clinging to a piece of driftwood, I drifted for 3 days and 3 nights before being rescued by a cargo ship. Returning home, I was greeted by a seafood feast. My dad Arthur, my mom Helen, my brother Adrian, and a girl I didn't recognize were sitting around the table, a picture of family harmony. The girl was named Cora, adopted by my parents after I disappeared. She was pure and sweet, and a few words from her made my parents beam with joy. "Uncle and Auntie, don't just pay attention to me, give sister some food too." As she spoke, she picked up a piece of grouper and put it in my bowl. "Sister, I heard you used to love eating fish, try it quickly. Dad specially air-freighted it, guaranteed fresh." Fresh. Those 2 words were like needles stabbing into my brain. I smelled that bloody smell again, saw Annie being minced into meat, and heard the crunch of sharks crushing bones. My stomach churned violently. I stood up, grabbed the red wine bottle, and slammed it directly onto her head. Bang! The bottle shattered, and red wine mixed with blood flowed down her forehead. Cora screamed and slid off the chair. The dining table was instantly silent. My dad slammed the table and pointed at me. "Scarlett, you're outrageous." My mom also turned pale and screamed as she rushed towards Cora. "Cora! Cora, how are you? Call an ambulance." My brother Adrian rushed over, pushed me away, and carefully picked up the bleeding Cora. The look he gave me was filled with anger and disgust. "Scarlett, 5 years apart, how have you become like this?" He pushed me against the wall, my back hitting it painfully. But I laughed. I looked at them and said, "I'm not crazy, but if anyone dares to mention fish again, I'll cut off their tongue." Instantly, they were all so frightened that they shuddered. Adrian held Cora, looking at me as if I were a monster. You're simply unreasonable." I ignored him and looked towards the door. There was a large fish tank there, with several tropical fish swimming around. I remembered that this was Cora's beloved possession, and she had shown it off on social media. Each fish was worth a lot of money. I walked over and picked up a half-person high blue and white porcelain vase next to it. "Scarlett, what are you doing? Stop!" My dad roared as he chased after me. I didn't hear him, using all the strength I had honed in hell for 5 years to smash the fish tank. The glass tank exploded, and water and fish were scattered all over the floor. Those beautiful little darlings flopped a few times on the ground before turning their white bellies up. Seeing this scene, Cora cried her heart out. "My fish! My little treasures! Scarlett, you devil!" Adrian comforted her with heartache, the look he gave me as if he wanted to eat me alive. "Scarlett, what exactly do you want?" I stepped on the water-covered floor and walked up to him, calmly saying, "I don't want anything. Just telling you that from today onwards in this house, it's either me or her, no both." I was referring to the fish and also to Cora. They all understood. That night, Cora was sent to the hospital, with 8 stitches in her forehead. I was locked in the basement by my dad. He pointed his finger at my nose and cursed. "You evil creature. I think you're really crazy. Reflect here. You'll only come out when you've figured things out." The basement was dark and damp, with no windows, only a dim yellow light. I didn't care. Compared to that sunless shark fishing vessel filled with blood and despair, this place was paradise. I even had a good night's sleep. The next day, my mom came to deliver food. Her eyes were red and swollen. "Scarlett, what exactly did you go through in these 5 years?" I looked at her and asked, "Mom, if I said that I was killing people every day, or on the road to being killed, would you believe it?" She was stunned, unable to say a word. Finally, she sighed and put down the lunchbox. "Your dad is still angry. Don't be stubborn with him. Cora is very understanding and said she doesn't blame you. As long as you apologize, this matter will be over." "Apologize?" I laughed. I picked up the lunchbox and poured it directly on the ground. "If you want me to apologize, fine. Let her kneel down and kowtow 3 times to me, for living in my room, wearing my clothes and spending my money." My mom was so frightened that she took a step back, her face filled with disbelief. You're impossible to reason with. Unreasonable." She stormed off. For the next 2 days, no one brought me food. They wanted to starve me, force me to submit. Unfortunately, in those 5 years on the ship, I had eaten raw fish, drunk blood water, and gnawed on the bottom of the ship. Not to mention starving for a few days. Starving for a week wouldn't kill me. On the 3rd night, the basement door opened. It was my brother, Adrian. He looked down at me, expressionless, as if he were looking at a stranger. "Mom and Dad asked me to ask you, have you figured it out yet?" I leaned against the wall, lazily raising my eyes. "Figured out what?" "Apologized to Cora." "Oh," I drawled. "Is she dead? If she's not dead, what is there to apologize for?" Adrian's face instantly darkened. "Scarlett, do you have to be like this? What exactly did Cora do to offend you? You laid such a heavy hand on her the first day you came back. She has a scar on her forehead. She's a girl. What will she do in the future?" "Leave a scar?" I chuckled. "That's good, it'll make a pair with mine." I pulled up the sleeve of my left arm. The entire length of my forearm was covered in crisscrossing scars, like ugly centipedes. The deepest one, from my wrist to my elbow, was from when I fought a sailor who wanted to bully me for his knife. I won. The knife went into his heart. Adrian saw the scars and his pupils constricted. He stared intently at me, sneering. "You did this to yourself, didn't you? Scarlett, I know you hate that we didn't find you sooner, but you can't take it out on Cora. She's innocent." "Innocent?" I retracted my hand, feeling that saying even one more word to him would be a waste. "Done? Get out if you're done." "You." Adrian's chest rose and fell with anger. He took out a black card from his pocket and threw it in front of me. "There's $1 million in here. Take it, leave this house, and live the life you want overseas." I looked at the card on the ground as if I had heard the biggest joke in the world. "Leave? Adrian, have you forgotten? I'm the eldest daughter of the Song family. The one who should leave is Cora, not me. Don't be ungrateful." Adrian was completely enraged. "You're just a lunatic now. A violent maniac. You'll only hurt the family if you stay. Mom and Dad have suffered enough from your disappearance. Can't you be a little more sensible?" "Sensible?" I stood up, approaching him step by step, like a wild beast awakened. "Like Cora, pleasing you all? Or like 5 years ago, obediently being sent to that noble summer camp, then being kidnapped and sold off?" The last sentence made Adrian's face turn deathly pale in an instant. What nonsense are you talking about? The truth of my disappearance 5 years ago was a family taboo. To the outside world, my parents said I was rebellious and ran away from home. But only we knew that I was kidnapped on the way to a noble summer camp. That summer camp was one that my brother, Adrian, insisted I go to. "You're talking nonsense. What happened back then was just an accident." Adrian's eyes darted around, but his voice was loud, as if trying to cover up his guilty conscience. I stared at him and smiled. Accident? Brother, why did you insist on me going back then? You knew I hated those pretentious activities. I was doing it for your own good. He stiffened his neck and retorted. I wanted you to meet more friends. Is that so? I leaned closer to him, lowered my voice, and said in his ear, but how do I remember that the organizer of that summer camp was the senior sister you were chasing at the time? Her last name seems to be Cor. Adrian's body stiffened suddenly, his pupils contracting violently. And to please her, you gave her the limited edition Patek Philippe watch that Dad gave you? He was as if he'd been stabbed and shoved me away. Stop spewing nonsense. I don't know what you're talking about. He threw down these words and fled the basement, his back looking defeated. Watching him flee in disarray, the arc of my lips grew wider and wider. It seemed I was right. My good brother was inseparable from what happened back then. And Cora's appearance was probably no coincidence. Not long after Adrian left, my father came. He probably heard something from Adrian, his face ashen, and he slapped me as soon as he came in. The sound of the slap, crisp and clear. Half of my face was numb, and there was a metallic taste in my mouth. You unfilial daughter. You dare slander your brother. He pointed at me, his fingers shaking. Adrian has suffered so much these past 5 years looking for you. Do you know that? Now that you're back, instead of being grateful, you want to sow discord in our family. Do you even have a conscience? I licked the blood from the corner of my mouth, not saying anything, just looking at him with the eyes of a dead person. I'm telling you, Scarlett, if you talk nonsense again, I'll break your legs. He threw down those harsh words and turned to leave. I looked at his back and said coldly, Dad, don't you want to know how I survived these 5 years? His footsteps stopped. I said, on the shark fishing boat, my daily job was to chop up the bodies of my companions and throw them into the sea as bait. Sometimes there wasn't enough bait, so they threw in living people. I saw a girl being torn apart by 3 tiger sharks. In less than a minute, all that was left was a skeleton with strips of flesh hanging from it. That scene was more spectacular than any horror movie you've ever seen. My father's body began to tremble. He turned his head sharply, his eyes bloodshot. Stop it. Shut your mouth. Why won't you let me speak? I laughed, my laugh cruel. Don't you all want to know why I became like this? I'm just telling you the answer. I lived in hell every day, and you guys were comfortable adopting a daughter and enjoying family happiness. Dad, tell me, is that fair? Shut up. He rushed over and grabbed my neck. I'll make you shut up. The feeling of suffocation came, and my vision went black. But I didn't struggle, just looked at him quietly, my eyes devoid of fear, a scene of dead silence. Perhaps my gaze was too frightening. The hand choking me began to tremble, and then slowly released. He staggered backward, grabbed the wall, and gasped for breath as if he had just woken up from a nightmare. Lunatic. You're a lunatic. He threw down these words and left as if fleeing. From that day on, no one came to the basement again. They wanted to use cold violence to force me to submit or let me die on my own. But they forgot that I was a person who had crawled out of hell. This kind of torment was nothing to me. A week later, I used a wire to pick the lock of the basement. On the ship, I had learned everything to survive. It was late at night when I walked out of the basement. The villa was quiet. I walked barefoot to the 2nd floor. My room had been turned into Cora's pink princess room, with lace curtains, a crystal chandelier, and a big princess bed. On the bed, Cora was sleeping soundly, a smile on her lips. I stood by the bed and quietly watched her for a while. I went into the bathroom and filled the bathtub with cold water. Then I went back to the bed, grabbed Cora by the neck, and dragged her out of bed. She was startled awake, and when she saw me, she screamed in fright. Ah, Scarlett, what are you doing? I didn't say anything, just dragged her into the bathroom and pushed her into the bathtub. Help. Help. The cold water instantly submerged her, and she struggled desperately, kicking her hands and feet wildly. Several times, she almost broke free. But I was more ruthless than her. I used my knee to hold down her stomach, pressed my entire body on her, and held her head underwater. Want to experience the feeling of drowning? Seawater filling your lungs, cold and salty. You can't even die comfortably. I whispered in her ear. Her struggle grew weaker and weaker, and finally, her body went limp and stopped moving. I released my hand, and she sank to the bottom of the bathtub like mud. I reached out and checked her breath. There was still some. Good, not dead yet. I pulled her out of the bathtub and threw her on the cold floor like a dead dog. Then I turned on the bathroom heater. All 4 bulbs were turned on, and the power was turned to maximum. The blinding light and scorching heat instantly filled the entire bathroom. I looked at Cora on the floor and smiled. I heard that deep-sea fish are afraid of heat. I wonder how long this mermaid can last. After saying that, I walked out of the bathroom and locked the door from the outside. I went back to my new room, the basement, lay down on the cold cement floor, and slept soundly. About an hour later, Cora's pig-slaughtering screams came from upstairs. Immediately afterward were the panicked shouts of my parents and brother, and the siren of the ambulance pierced the night sky. The entire Song family was in chaos, and I slept especially sweetly. The next day before dawn, I was dragged out of the basement by my father. He slapped me in the face, the force so great that my ears rang and half of my face was numb. "You beast! What did you do to Cora?" My mother stood to the side, crying uncontrollably. "Cora. She has extensive deep cold burns all over her body," the doctor said. "She might be disfigured. She's only 20 years old." Adrian's eyes were bloodshot, like an enraged lion, and if my dad hadn't stopped him, he might have already pounced on me and torn me apart. "I'm going to kill you, Scarlett. I'm going to kill you." I looked at their near-death act and yawned indifferently. "What's all the noise? Nobody's dead." "You." My dad raised his hand in anger, wanting to slap me again, but seeing the fearless, even provocative look in my eyes, he finally lowered it. He collapsed wearily onto the sofa, looking as if he'd aged 10 years overnight. What sins? What sins did our family commit?" My mom supported him, crying as she said, "Call the police. Arthur, call the police. Arrest this lunatic." "Yes, call the police," Adrian immediately echoed. "We can't let her stay in this house anymore. She'll kill us all." I looked at them, suddenly finding it funny. "Call the police? Fine." I took a small voice recorder out of my pocket and pressed play. "Here's $1 million. Take it, leave this house, and go live the life you want overseas." Adrian's voice rang out clearly. The living room fell silent instantly. Adrian's face turned as white as a sheet. My parents were also stunned, looking at him in disbelief. "Adrian, you..." My mom's voice trembled. "I didn't. Mom, Dad, don't listen to her nonsense. She forged this." Adrian hurriedly defended himself, but his voice was very weak. "Forge." I shook the voice recorder in my hand. "Should we send it for authentication? Or should I just send this recording, along with the news of the Song group's heir forcing his abducted younger sister of 5 years to leave home, to all the major media outlets? What do you think? How many limit downs will our Song family's stock fall tomorrow?" "You wouldn't dare." Adrian's eyes were about to burst. "Watch me." I smiled like a devil. My dad suddenly stood up, staring at me intently. "What exactly do you want?" "I don't want anything." I put away the voice recorder. "I just want to take back what belongs to me. My room, my clothes, everything that I, as the Song family's eldest daughter, am entitled to. Also," I paused, my gaze coldly sweeping over them, "make Cora get out of this house." "Impossible." Adrian refused without even thinking. "Cora's so badly hurt. She has no one to rely on. Where would she go?" "That's your problem to consider, not mine." I turned and slowly went upstairs. "I'll give you 3 days. If she's still here in 3 days, that recording will appear in the inboxes of all of the Song group's directors." I returned to that pink princess room. The things inside were mostly smashed by me, and there was a disgusting smell of burnt flesh in the air. I didn't care. I dismantled the princess bed and slept directly on the mattress. For the next 3 days, the Song family was calm. My parents and Adrian left early and returned late every day, probably going to the hospital to take care of their beloved Cora. They didn't bother me anymore, and they didn't bring me food. But that didn't stop me. I directly ordered takeout from the city's most high-end private kitchen, ordering whatever I wanted, and sending the bill to my dad's company. Anyway, I'm the Song family's eldest daughter, and he can afford that much money. On the third night, my parents and Adrian returned. The three of them sat on the living room sofa, their expressions solemn, as if judging me. I came downstairs and looked at them. What's the verdict? My dad was silent for a long time before hoarsely saying, Scarlett, Cora has suffered enough. She grew up in an orphanage, with no one to rely on. We can't kick her out at a time like this. So your choice is to abandon your own daughter for an outsider? I raised an eyebrow, my heart ice cold. We're not abandoning you, my mom hurriedly said. We just hope you can coexist peacefully with Cora. She's a good girl, A good girl? I interrupted her. A good girl, who can usurp another person's nest and comfortably enjoy everything that doesn't belong to her? Cora's not like that. Adrian stood up excitedly. She's always been grateful to us. And she treats you like a sister. It's you. You started targeting her and hurting her as soon as you came back. I targeted her? I laughed as if I'd heard the biggest joke in the world. Adrian, can you put your hand on your heart and say that if it were another girl, would you have let her into the Song family's door? Adrian choked. You wouldn't. I answered for him. You're so good to her, but it's only because she's the sister of your beloved Stella. You're transferring the guilt you feel for that woman indirectly harming me onto her, using your kindness to her to alleviate your own sense of guilt. I approached him, looking at him suspiciously. So you spoil Cora, and you might even be in love with her, am I right? You're talking nonsense. Adrian flew into a rage. Whether I'm talking nonsense or not, you know it in your heart. I was too lazy to waste any more words on him. My patience is limited. Tomorrow morning, if I still see her, you'll bear the consequences. After I finished speaking, I turned to go upstairs. Stop! My dad called out to me. He took out a folder from behind him and threw it on the coffee table. This is a mental evaluation report. The doctor said that you suffer from severe post-traumatic stress disorder and antisocial personality disorder, and have a strong tendency towards violence. My steps faltered. We've already contacted the best psychiatric hospital. My dad looked at me, his eyes without a trace of warmth, only coldness and determination. Tomorrow, you're going to the hospital with us for treatment. Go to the hospital. Was it treatment or confinement? I looked at the three of them and suddenly laughed. Okay. My easy agreement stunned them. I walked over, picked up the prepared evaluation report, and casually flipped through it. Since I'm mentally ill, I raised my head, giving them a smile that was so bright it was eerie. Then a mentally ill person who commits murder doesn't have to pay with their life, right? That smile made the three of their faces turn whiter than paper in an instant. The next day, I was escorted by my parents and Adrian to the best private psychiatric hospital in the city. High walls, electric fences, and security guards everywhere. We were received by a Dr. Evans wearing wire-rimmed glasses. Dr. Evans looked at my report, symbolically asked me a few questions, and then said to my parents, Mr. Arthur, Mrs. Arthur, your daughter's situation is special. She has experienced severe trauma and has extreme aggression towards the outside world. Ordinary treatment may not be very effective. My mom was so anxious that she was almost crying. Then what should we do? Dr. Evans, please, you must cure her. We're willing to spend any amount of money. Dr. Evans pushed up his glasses and said, We have a special treatment plan that is high risk and requires the full cooperation of the family. Simply put, in order to stimulate her recovery, you must completely comply with her during the treatment. No matter what she does, you cannot resist, otherwise it will worsen her condition, and all previous efforts will be wasted. We'll cooperate. We'll definitely cooperate with all our might. My dad agreed without even thinking. As long as they could lock up and cure this lunatic of mine, they were willing to do anything. Dr. Evans nodded and looked at me. Ms. Scarlett, are you willing to receive treatment? I looked at him, and then at the complicated expressions in my parents' and Adrian's eyes, and nodded. I am. So my treatment began. The so-called therapy was to decorate a ward to look like our family's living room. My family, including Cora, who had just been transferred from the hospital, became my supporting actors. Cora still had bandages wrapped around her head, and thick ointment was applied to the burned areas on her face, making her look very ugly. When she saw me, her body trembled, and her eyes were full of fear and resentment. Dr. Evans instructed from the side. From now on you must completely follow Ms. Scarlett's instructions. Whatever she asks you to do, you must do it. Remember, no matter what she does, do not resist, do not accuse. This is part of the treatment. The family looked at each other, and finally, in order to cure me, heavily nodded their heads. Dr. Evans led the nurse out of the room and monitored from the observation room with one-way glass next door. Only the 5 of us were left in the room. I walked to the main seat on the sofa and sat down. My parents, Adrian and Cora, were all standing like prisoners. I pointed at Cora. You come here. Cora shuddered in fear, looking at my parents for help. My mom nodded at her. Cora then slowly walked in front of me. Kneel. Cora's face instantly turned red, and tears welled up in her eyes. She looked at my parents and Adrian, hoping they would stand up for her. But the 3 of them were silent, no one spoke. After all, this was treatment. Looks like you don't want to cure my illness? I looked towards the one-way glass. Cora bit her lip and reluctantly knelt down. That's right. I nodded in satisfaction. Now kowtow to me 3 times. Cora's body stiffened. She raised her head, her eyes full of hatred. Scarlett, don't go too far. Too far. I laughed. Compared to what you and your sister did to me, this is nothing. I stood up, walked in front of her, looking down at her. Do you think I don't know who you really are? Cora's pupils suddenly shrank. I don't know what you're talking about, she said stubbornly. Don't know. I lowered my head and whispered in her ear. I remember 5 years ago, the captain of that ship, when drunk, always mumbled that he had 2 precious daughters, one named Stella, and one named Cora. He also said that after finishing this big job of kidnapping me, he would retire and take you to live a good life abroad. That big job he was talking about, that was me, right? Cora. Or rather, the captain's daughter. Cora's body instantly felt like it had been struck by lightning. She suddenly looked up, staring at me in horror, as if she had seen a ghost. Stella was the senior Adrian pursued back then, the organizer of that elite summer camp. And Cora is her younger sister. Their father was the captain of that shark-hunting ship. Back then, it was Stella who conspired with her father to plan my kidnapping. And Cora, from beginning to end, was in the know. Her being adopted by the Song family was also planned by the 2 sisters. Their father went bankrupt due to business competition with my father more than a decade ago, and held a grudge. Their purpose was to get revenge, to seize everything from our Song family. All of this is the truth I pieced together on the ship from the drunken captain's mouth. You, how could you know? Cora's voice trembled, her face pale. Secrets cannot be kept forever if you do them. I straightened up, looking at her coldly. I not only know this, but I also know that your sister, Stella, is currently in the VIP ward of this hospital, waiting for your treatment to end, to celebrate victory together. Cora's face completely lost its color. She collapsed to the ground, shaking like a leaf. No, that's not true. You're lying. Whether I'm lying or not, the police will tell us the answer. I took out the small voice recorder from my pocket again. This voice recorder recorded all the conversations I had with her just now. Cora finally realized that I was trying to trick her into talking, that I wasn't undergoing treatment at all, but judging her. She screamed and lunged at me like a madwoman, trying to snatch the voice recorder. But how could she be my opponent? I easily subdued her and gave her a resounding slap. Slap. I used all my strength for this slap. Half of Cora's face immediately swelled up, and blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. Murder. She covered her face and screamed hysterically. Dr. Evans and the nurse outside the room heard the commotion and rushed in immediately. My parents and Adrian were also frightened and hurried forward to pull me away. Scarlett, what are you doing? Didn't we agree it was just treatment? My mother was almost crying with anxiety. Yes, I am treating her. I shook off their hands and threw the voice recorder to Dr. Evans. Dr. Evans, I think this medical record should be given more attention than mine. Dr. Evans picked up the voice recorder in confusion and pressed play. When my cold voice and Cora's terrified confession clearly echoed in the room, everyone was petrified. My parents, Adrian, the expressions on their faces went from shock to anger to despair. They stared at Cora, who was slumped on the ground, their eyes as if they wanted to flay her alive. So, that's how it is. My father's voice was terrifyingly hoarse. Our family actually raised a viper. Invited a wolf into the house. Adrian clenched his fists even tighter, his nails digging deep into his flesh, blood flowing down between his fingers. He walked towards Cora step by step, each step like treading on everyone's heart. He walked in front of Cora, squatted down, his voice filled with desperate trembling. Tell me this isn't true. Cora looked at him, at this fool who had been manipulated by her, and suddenly burst into wild laughter, laughing until tears flowed. It's true. She looked at Adrian, her eyes filled with the pleasure of revenge. Adrian, you are the #1 idiot. Do you think my sister really likes you? She's just using you. Using you, you fool, to destroy Scarlet, to destroy your song family. More than a decade ago, my father's company was bankrupted by your father. Our whole family was destroyed by you. Why can you be so high and mighty? I want you to taste the bitterness of family destruction too. Her words were like a knife, piercing Adrian's heart fiercely. He collapsed completely, hugging his head and howling like a beast. As for me, I just watched this scene quietly, my heart as still as water. The police arrived quickly. According to the recording I provided and Cora's confession, the police quickly arrested Stella. Their captain father had already died in a storm, and a human trafficking gang that had been operating for many years was wiped out in one fell swoop. With the truth revealed, our family fell into a deathly silence. My father turned white overnight and locked himself in the study. My mother cried all day long, her spirit on the verge of collapse. As for Adrian, he locked himself in his room, not eating, not drinking, not seeing anyone. He couldn't accept that he was the culprit who had personally harmed his sister and almost destroyed the entire family. I didn't comfort any of them. This is what they deserved. I moved back into my room, threw out everything that belonged to Cora, burned it all, and then replaced it with my favorite black, white, and gray tones. Half a month later, Adrian finally came out of his room. He had lost a lot of weight, his eye sockets were sunken, and he looked haggard beyond recognition. He walked in front of me, his eyes red, and then with a thump, he knelt down. I'm sorry. He lowered his head, his forehead touching the cold floor, his voice full of remorse. Scarlet, I'm sorry. It was my fault. I'm sorry. Kill me. As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped himself hard. One slap after another. Slap sound mercilessly. Soon, his face was swollen, and blood oozed from the corner of his mouth. I didn't help him, nor did I stop him. I just watched quietly. Watching this brother who once held me in the palm of his hand, now kneeling humbly in front of me, begging for my forgiveness in a self-destructive way. In my heart, there was no pleasure, no sympathy. Only a dead silence. He slapped himself more than a dozen times until my mother rushed over and hugged his hand, crying before he stopped. He raised his head, looked at me with bloodshot eyes, his voice hoarse. Scarlet, hit me, scold me. As long as you can forgive me, you can ask me to do anything. I looked at him, and looked for a long time. Then I shook my head. I won't forgive you. His body trembled violently, and the last bit of light in his eyes went out. But I changed my tone. I won't hate you anymore either. Hate requires strength. My strength was exhausted in those 5 years. Adrian, from today on, you are no longer my brother. Between us, everything is settled. After I finished speaking, I turned around and went back to my room, closing the door. Outside the door came his suppressed to the extreme, desperate crying. I leaned against the door and slowly slid down to the ground. 2 lines of clear tears slid silently from the corners of my eyes. Goodbye, my brother. Goodbye, everything I once had. The next day, Adrian was forced to cheer up and deal with the company's share price, which was teetering on the brink of collapse due to the scandal. And I, when he was most overwhelmed, made my request to my parents. I want 30% of the song group shares, and the group's supreme decision-making power. They agreed without any hesitation, and even wanted to give me all the shares. I refused. I wasn't asking for their charity, I was taking back what I deserved and the interest they owed me for those 5 years. Adrian had no objection either. He personally took the lawyer and completed all the share transfer procedures. On the day of the handover, he pushed the thick pile of documents in front of me, his head lowered, not daring to look at me. "Scarlett, from now on, the company is yours." I signed my name, looked at his gaunt profile and said calmly, "You don't need to leave the company. You continue being your CEO, making money for me." He suddenly looked up, a hint of disbelief flashing in his eyes. I curled my lips into a cold smile. After all, an obedient dog is easier to deal with than training a new one. I became the behind-the-scenes ruler of the Song Corporation. Adrian was kicked out of the villa by me. He didn't go to a hotel, but rented a small apartment near the company, arriving first and leaving last every day. He was like a machine wound up tightly, working frantically, trying to numb himself. My parents tried to plead on his behalf. "Scarlett, Adrian knows he was wrong, just let him come back a family." Before my mother could finish speaking, I put down my cutlery. "A family?" I looked at her, my eyes cold. When I was thrown next to the meat grinder, watching my colleagues turn into mincemeat, you and Cora were the family. My mother's face turned deathly pale instantly, her lips trembling, unable to utter a single word. My father sighed, pulled her into his arms, and looked at me with a tired and helpless gaze. "Scarlett, we know we're sorry to you, but Adrian can't hold on anymore. The doctor said he has severe depression. He's still your brother after all." "Brother?" I laughed, the sound echoing in the empty dining room, sounding particularly jarring. In my eyes, he's just a more useful dog. After saying that, I ignored them and went straight upstairs. In the study, I looked through the Song Corporation's financial reports for the past 5 years. I had to admit, Adrian was a business genius. He had turned my father's half-dead traditional enterprise into the business empire it was today. Ironically, the harder he worked, the more money he made for me. In a pile of documents, I found an old photograph. It was taken on my 15th birthday. In the photo, I was wearing a princess dress, surrounded by my parents and Adrian, smiling brightly. Back then, Adrian would run all over the city to buy me a limited edition cake. Back then, my father would be happy as a child because I had improved in my exams. Back then, my mother would gently stroke my head and say I was her most proud daughter. Back then, we were a real family. My fingers traced the carefree girl in the photo, and the softest parts of my heart gradually recovered. 5 years of hellish torment had long made me forget what it was like to smile. I thought my heart was dead, and I wouldn't feel anything anymore. But this photo awakened my past joy. Perhaps I was too tired. Even hate could be exhausting. Perhaps I just wanted to go home too much. I took the photo and went downstairs. My parents were sitting on the sofa, silent, the atmosphere heavy. When they saw me come down, they stood up nervously. I walked up to them and put the photo on the coffee table. "Dad, Mom." I spoke, my voice a little dry. "Can we still go back?" They were stunned, then their faces lit up with ecstatic expressions. "Yes, of course we can." My mother rushed over and hugged me tightly, crying with joy. "Quick, call Adrian." "Scarlett, you're finally willing to forgive us. That's great, that's great." My father's eyes also turned red, too excited to speak. I stood there stiffly, letting her hug me, without responding. I just wanted to try. For the sake of the good times we had, I could forgive him once.